All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Hands On. My name is Alana, and I work at the Innovation Cluster. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Innovation Cluster, we are a not-for-profit organization that supports startups working in innovation. We do so by offering advisory services, access to partners, and workshops such as this one. So we encourage you to apply if you have an innovative idea or a startup working in technology. You can do so by applying online at www.innovationcluster.ca. So today's session will be recorded, so you're going to have access to this workshop afterwards. And we will also have a Q&A after the presentation. So if you think of anything, please save it until the end, and you can put it in the Q&A box below. Again, welcome to Hands On. So today we're doing business digitization and building an app with Gyroscopic Inc. Today we have Juan Broderick, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Gyroscopic Inc., and he's going to facilitate this session. So some of the learning objectives today are proofing the right app solution for you and your business, building the foundation for your app, and building a team and product. So I'm going to hand it over to Juan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alana. I appreciate the introduction. She did a great job, but for those of you that didn't get the opportunity to see me in any of my last talks that I did with theCUBE, or have me on LinkedIn or any of my other digital, media sources, I'll give you a short introduction. My name is Juan Broderick, and currently I am sitting as the CTO and the co-founder of Gyroscopic Technologies in Peterborough. We are a software consultancy as well as an incubator. We not only help businesses create their applications and their digitization or their next step of their business, but we also as well contain and actually keep a lot of our own applications that we spin off into other companies as well if we find the need for them. Prior to that, however, I am actually trained, through my education in computer science and software engineering. After my formal education, I've been a wealth of different places from, TD Bank, large kind of corporate headquarters in downtown Toronto. I've been to another tech incubator with Communitech. I've worked for larger government institutions like the Department of National Defense, CSIS, and the United Nations, all of which I was actually creating applications either for, like I said, small businesses, much like the actual incubator of Communitech, or to large government industries like DND and CSIS. With that being said, I think my passion really is creating not just apps in general, but creating apps that can leverage businesses or actually the services that they intend to non-intrusively and as easily as possible. So with that, that kind of brings me to this presentation where I know some of you guys might have had the opportunity to look over the objectives and might actually know what we're doing today. But just to reaffirm that this presentation, I'm hoping to not make it an exhaustive sort of breakdown in regards to how to technically build an application. If you are kind of planning on doing that with your business, I applaud you. But I would say that trying to get everything you need to build an app in a 1-hour presentation, yourself is not exactly the best route. However, what I would like to do in this presentation is hopefully tell you guys what I found in my many years of development on all different sizes of businesses, a lot of the pitfalls that I've seen, and as well as a lot of the shortcomings that a lot of people, if that is business leaders, project managers, or developers kind of make when they're hoping to kind of scale up or digitize their business. So at the end of this, I hope to go over a couple different segments and give you guys what I believe to be the best chance of success at ensuring that your application integrates with your business well and does exactly what you're looking for it to do. With that being said, it's going to be a lot of information. I'll try not to talk too fast and usually use this theme here, which is going to be space travel, to hopefully help kind of formalize and better communicate how we'll go through this journey of building your app together. And with that, once again, I'm not too sure how this is going to be done, so I'll leave this to the CUBE staff. But this presentation, along with notes that I've made for resources, applications, tools, and integrations that we use for a lot of our clients will be included. So you will be provided this at the end of the presentation. And with that Q&A, I'll try to wrap it up a little bit fast, so there's still a lot of time for you guys to ask questions. So without further ado, so the presentation outline, as Alana already kind of went over, we're going to go ahead and kind of, first start with the personal solution for your business. So I think in the crowd today, unfortunately, I'm not able to actually ask individual people what their business is like and really cater it there. I'm going to try to be a little bit more broad, but understanding that your business is personal and it's unique, and each of these paths basically have to be unique and personalized to your business to ensure that your app fits it best. With that, we're going to understand how to get a real data-driven approach on building your application. And then we're going to dive into the actual technical design of what kind of those questions equate to in an actual kind of individual specifications for technical options. So really going to go ahead, I'm going to demystify a lot of technology and a lot of things that I feel like most founders that are on the business side and not so much on the technology side really worry about. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to build a digitization checklist realistically, where you can take that to a developer or a consulting company, much like Gyroscopic, and not only kind of alleviate some of the stress and some of that worry you have initially, but make it a lot cheaper for you, not just at that initial cost, but also in the long run of ensuring that you're getting exactly what you want and that the whole process of kind of creating that application is as frictionless as possible. Finally, at the end, we're going to talk about the systems of scalable growth, and that's going to be really everything that is life after development. And as we go through this application, or as we go through this presentation, I will be talking about lots of these pitfalls and shortcomings, and I think one of the largest ones is this idea of building an application being an event instead of a process. So when you're building an application, it really is a series of events, and it is a process where when the application is actually built itself, there's a lot of individual steps after to ensure that this application gets to the success that you are hoping for and everything that you're actually planning for. So in the, I guess, theme of this presentation, it really is building the spaceship and then ensuring that you have the proper team to man that spaceship with you for whatever the future may throw at you. So with that being said, a personalized solution for your business. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set course, and we're going to find a data-driven way to approach and discover the exact needs of your business and understand that every single decision that you make when making an application should have something behind that decision to ensure that the confidence that you have behind it is actually backed up by something that's rigid. I think a lot of the times we can think that that's a technology person. There's some sort of intuition or some sort of aptitude that they have that we don't have, but all they have is basically a tool list or a checklist that they go through, and they ensure that what you're asking for is backed up by their own sort of, I guess, framework. And I'm going to teach you guys that framework today, demystify it a little bit. So the design decision process follows the following here. And this is something that I'd ask you guys keep in mind for the duration of this presentation, because I'm going to constantly refer back to this when I go through each individual slide, and it'll really help us understand what we need to think of and how we need to demystify a lot of these processes and keep in mind to get to the best outcome possible. So when we're designing any of our applications, we're going to be confronted with a series of options that could very well be daunting. Always kind of coming to, first off, a segmentation, what I have to think about, if that is what it looks like, what it feels like, who uses it, and amalgamating those options that we're going to talk about later in the presentation. From there, we look at the individual tools. So what does this technology do differently, and how do each of these individual options compare to one another? Now, your businesses are different. Some of you guys might not use the same technologies, and understanding that out of, say, those 5 technologies, maybe 2 or 3 of them work best for you, and they really fit into what your business is individually trying to do. From there, the research that we'll talk about, there's tools and there's individual people, mentors, and groups, I guess, that you can go to, even if it is Google, where you can find out what technology individual businesses use and what actual features they solicited to help their business. From there, we're going to get to the verdict, where if you hold true to these 4 tips, there should always be, once again, a foundation of understanding and a foundation of confidence for any individual choice that you put forward. So once again, this whole presentation, I'm hoping to build that confidence, give you guys that framework so you can take it forward. And if you were developing your own application, or if you choose to come to a consulting company, be it Gyroscopic or anyone else, this is the exact same tools that they're going to use to help I guess, define a rigid boundary and sort of plan for building a successful application for your business. So as much as I would like to talk to everyone there today, I know I'm not able to, so I'll just kind of gauge this out in a very sort of broad way. When you're making an application, I believe there's really 3 kind of overbearing steps stages that you can be at. So there's the proof of concept, there's the minimal viable product, and then there's also the service integration. One thing that I see a lot of clients that come to us do is they get very excited, which you should be, about your application. And they think about doing absolutely everything right now, and not kind of thinking about the fact that, once again, the creation of an application is not an individual event, but it's a process. So a lot of this has to do with funding for the most part, because as we'll get to later in the conversation, excuse me, applications are not cheap. especially if you are planning on making this a pivotal and an integral part of your business. It's something that you do want to invest money in. But however, we also understand that money doesn't grow on trees, and how much money you have available to you is something that's very important to recognize. So if you don't have that much money available to you and you're creating an application to reach out to investors and actually allow them to see something so you can get a little bit more money, if it is from investors, advisors, or partners, a proof of concept is something that is very important to you. It's something where you should frame your kind of framework and your reference in, what do I need to do just to get far enough to get that funding and have a solid foundation where I can iterate on top of and start building those features. So from there, the second one, having a little bit more money and a little bit more of a user base, being able to have a minimal viable product is just having slightly more of those features to be able to iterate a little bit more on and provide a little bit more to the user, or if it is an internal employee for that service that you're planning on providing. Now, if you already have a business and this is something that you're just going to be using to basically implement within your other services that you offer, this is a service integration, I like to call. And that's something where you have to actually take the development a little bit farther and have a little bit more tried and tested means to ensure that if you're integrating this to a platform that's being used by many or internal employees, you might want to be sure that everything is up to par, it's up to code, and it will seamlessly integrate with everything else that you're doing. So mainly this is really a tool for you guys to think and understand that when you're going to either a consultant or you're building it yourself, it is okay to exist on absolutely any of these pieces or these segments, and to recognize that and understand that you will get to the end no matter what. But if you do not have the funding and the money, you have to understand that starting at a POC or an MVP to get to a service integration is going to be much more beneficial for you. And in fact, if you try to get to the end when you only have enough funds and maybe even resources for a POC, then you really will hurt yourself and your business in that way. Like I said, it's a process, it's iteration, and you will get to the end, but ensuring that you always have enough resources to build a solid foundation on top of one another. So regardless of where you are on that segment, I think for the most part, every single business out there has a customer and they have an end user. So if that is I guess a business that does front facing, so for the most part, say I'm an application and I open this to the public and I'm looking to service these people or compete with someone else, or if it's a business that's internal. So I'm making an application for my employees to currently use in a business process automation sense. The first thing that you should always be asking yourself, and I know this seems pretty rudimentary, but sometimes when we are overcome by emotions and we're very happy and excited to do things, we forget some of the fundamental questions. And one of the biggest ones is, what is your customer profile, or who is your customer? Now, some of the biggest things that are actually going to impact the application that you're going to build are some of these things that I laid out in front of you. So age, first off, who your target market is and how old they are. That's going to dictate basically what technology they're using, the language you're using, and how you have to actually build the actual technology around it to better service them. Now, something like locality. So once again, if it's internal, if it's external, if it's in Ontario, if it's in Canada, if it's in America, or if it's across the world, that's also going to paint a very different picture of what's required for building your application, maintaining your application, and the team around servicing your application. So all these are going to make sense, like I said, when I parse a little bit forward into our presentation, but I would say keep these in mind, because these really are the big things that motivate and drive a lot of the features that you have to select when building your application. Technology preferences. What devices or services do you or your customer use? Here, this is something that a lot of clients don't know initially, and it's completely fine to, I think a lot of business people that we work with are great business people in different disciplines and industries that we certainly have absolutely no, knowledge in, if it is construction, engineering, motor mechanics, whatever it may be. But the fact that when we're looking for technology preferences, I think a lot of people come into it with the knowledge that they want a phone app because it seems, accessible, it seems easy, everyone's on their phone. But usually what we do at Gyroscopic, and what you're very capable of doing, and I have notes in this message or in this presentation, is using a business analyst to actually go out and either canvas your employees with or your employees or your end users on what they're using. So if they're iPhone users, if they're Android users, if they're usually out and about, or maybe they're a little bit of an older generation, they're not actually comfortable using their phones, but really finding out what your specific business users actually use from a technology perspective, and understanding that's going to be the most important thing for what you actually develop your application on. You know, if it's the coolest looking phone app, but all of your customers are older generation, they don't use phones, and that's going to be completely useless to you. You won't be able to actually fund the next few iterations of development. And finally, feature accuracy. So this kind of goes back to the last slide where I talked about proof of concept versus an MVP versus a service integration. How accurate your features are and how far developed do they need to be for the first iteration of basically what you're trying to provide to these customers. And my time working with the Department of National Defense and CSIS, I know I was in the AI space and I was doing service integrations and operations. And with that, I knew the difference between 90% and 100% could sometimes mean years. And it's a very big difference, and very often that 90% was more than enough to actually push out to the customers and provide that service to them. So understanding that for our business, we very much like to be perfectionists, but perfection in the state and sense of technology sometimes can really mean night or day, and understanding that just because you want it to be perfect, is that exactly what the application needs? So with that, it's pretty simple. I think those are a couple frameworks from the data gathering and data mining perspective, looking at your individual business and then jumping into what it takes to design the right ship or the right application to ensure that it's stable, scalable, and an application that matches your business as well as being secure. So keeping those in mind, we're going to jump into a little bit of that, once again, demystification of how you should be leveraging your technology with some of those individual, I guess, quirks and unique interests of your business. So I think this is one big part that I think a lot of people that we do encounter, and I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd right now are very worried about. When you're thinking about building an application, you usually give a lot of power or a lot of, I guess, onus to the actual people that you're working with, if that is a consultant or your developers. I think a lot of this is done because we see technology, and if you know, we do Google anything now, if you were talking about applications or payment processing or databases, you'd be confronted with hundreds of thousands of search options or output really that says a variety of different things. And honestly, it's way too much to parse through for anyone that, first off, isn't too comfortable with the subject, but as well just because you know, technology people, developers do like putting their information out there. They're on the forefront and they're talking about it. But realistically, when it comes to technology options, there's 6 things that I laid out here that I think are really important. And if we pair these along with the things that we just talked about, you can get a really good understanding of exactly what you need with cutting through all of the noise that is, you know, is this technology better than that technology? What should I use? What does the other big company use? And the fact that a lot of their decisions are made off, once again, these foundational and fundamental, very easy questions. So the first question that I think you have to ask when you're making an actual application is, am I going web app or am I going native mobile? This is really for the front facing. If it is for the internal, it becomes pretty easy in the sense that very often it is a web app or it's an actual software piece. So this is just, once again, who is your client? What is the demographic? If it is age, if it is you know, locality, if it is what their actual device preference is. And once you actually get, if that is from canvassing, so going out asking your customers, or going on to openly available databases like Ontario Open Data or Kaggle and searching some of, I guess, the age demographics and what they use, you can get to a very definitive answer in regards to 80% of the people that I'm trying to target are much more on their phones than they are on their desktop. Therefore, then a phone native application is something that I would be looking for. Now, the data being stored, you might encounter this SQL or no SQL. So this one's a little bit more nitty gritty, and realistically, I think we do have to address databases, because I think data right now is something that is super important. And as business owners, it's all things that you guys are going to encounter. And once again, there might be a little bit of, I guess, fear behind it, because it does seem a little bit daunting. So when it comes to data, if you have a very rigid plan of what your business is doing now, possibly what they'll be doing tomorrow and the day after that, and obviously a little bit more of a metaphorical extended sense, then you really should be able to determine what your database needs to do and what kind of database it is. You're going to have a lot of different options, and very often those options are on you know, what the actual team or the developer is used to using, which I would say definitely try your best to accommodate that, because if they're good at doing it, it's going to be a lot easier and simpler for you. It'll have a lot better practices and best standards, as well as be a lot cheaper in the long run, obviously, for developing. But between SQL and NoSQL, it really is the diversity of how much your data will change how much the processes will change, and keeping in mind basically telling your developers or telling your clients how rigid you think your service offerings may be over the next few years. So hosting and tech preferences, you guys will probably have interacted or came across this with AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Engine, and a lot of these other kind of, I guess, platforms that offer cloud computing. So this is also a very quick one where I'm really just trying to demystify and really let everyone know that cloud computing should not be something that you fear when you see it. For the most part, when it comes to hosting and technical preferences, the only question that you should really be asking is, do I have current software that is on this platform, or is the client or the actual consultancy that I'm working with at this point use something that they're best with? For the most part, hosting and tech preferences, they'll always be able to forward you a cost of what it would be month over month for the actual throughput that you're planning on actually having on this application. And between most of the big three, which a lot of big consultancies work with, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Engine, there's really not that much of a difference. For reference, I know a lot of the clients that we have that we are currently running a production load for, I think most of them are less than $3 a day to run everything from their application, their backups, their databases, their resiliencies, their CDNs, and everything else you need to basically provide an application that is scalable, an application that is on good infrastructure, and an application that is basically always on, and as well can be billed per hour. So if you're not using it, you don't have to pay for it. So once again, hosting tech preferences, don't worry too much. Ask your client, ask your consultant more so what it is that they use, what they're most comfortable with, and also if they do maybe per hour billing, and the fact that most of them, when it comes to cloud computing, they're competing with one another. Their service offerings are the same. When it comes to special security, our point down here, this is really the clients that you have. A lot of you may have clients specifically if you're making an application, say for the government, whatever else it may be. They may have special needs where it comes to maybe the database locality, or maybe certain laws. You know, if a database is stored in America versus a database stored in Canada, then maybe laws between PIPEDA or the Patriot Act, and these individual things will really dictate and help gravitate basically a lot of these special security questions that you'll have. However, when it comes to security, for the most part, once again, this is something that if you have a good consultant and you can kind of vet them, you can ask them a couple questions, you can ask what they do to kind of handle this and really compare it against other things that you see on the internet, or a business analyst or friend even, to really ensure that they know what they're doing. But once again, for the most part, a developer has a certain, I guess, skill and tool set of security practices that they'll put on all applications. And the only thing you'll really need to know is if you're dealing with government or anything else, then you would have to ask the clients, that is the government, and then forward those requirements to the actual person or the consultancy. Payment processing, how will you be processing payment throughout this app? So if it's an application on the web store, or sorry, the app store or the Google Play Store, then it's very easy to buy that application. And then from there, you know, you have the buy-in. Or is it going to be a SaaS product where you pay per month, per year, half a year, whatever it may be? How are those payments being processed? Is that going to be through checking? Is it going to be through credit? Or is it going to be through a different sort of system where basically you need to let the actual consultancy know, or your developer know, so you can ensure that there's always a constant flow of money being able to come in, and you're actually able to pay for the next iterations of this application. So the very last one, I promise, out of the 6 is emergent technologies. And the emergent technologies is really just a catch-all for a lot of these new kind of fun technologies that we hear about if we're in the technology space. If it's the information of, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and a series of other things that I'm sure you'll come across. So if your application really needs emergent technologies, it's really important to understand that, first off, what does your emergent technology provide? If you're providing AI, or you want AI in your application to say, give better recommendations, or if it is to, I guess, vet things or use computer vision or understand what the actual user is interacting with the machine, I think understanding the accuracy that it's going to give to your application over not using something like artificial intelligence, or the resilience and security blockchain will provide. And then really understanding the difference between having it and not having it financially, because very often these can be very expensive things where they can be worked in after you're past the MVP and POC stage, if you're not familiar with these. And then also, because these are very specific technologies, understanding that a consultancy that doesn't exactly do these isn't always able to kind of take these very easily, you know, and implement them into your system to the accuracy that you really want. And like I said, in my past experience of working with the Department of National Defense or even TD Bank headquarters, the implementation of AI and the actual use of AI are sometimes the delta between them are very far apart. So it's very easy to kind of use AI and put it into a system and a machine, but to change that accuracy from 90 to 100, and if you need 100, can be a very daunting process, can take thousands, tens of thousands of dollars realistically, and a lot of time. So find out if that works for you, if it's something that you need, and then also reach out to possibly a business analyst, someone that knows, so they can give you a little more information and better inform that decision. So I promise that was one of the most long-winded parts of this conversation. It was a lot more rattling off, I think, the demystification of a lot of the technology options you're going to have. And whenever you go to a client or a developer, they're going to go through a lot of these individual aspects of technology between the front end, the back end, whatever it may be. But I assure you that almost all of these pieces will fit into these 6 categories. And if you keep these 6 categories close to you and basically read the descriptions on them to further understand how these fit into your business, then you will always be able to make that decision of which one to choose, once again, in a data-driven sense and with a lot of confidence because you understand what exactly it does and how that fits into your business. So from there, I'm going to start with the first exercise. This one I'm going to run through a little bit easier. And once again, it's to basically help get your ideas out to the client or the developer and basically make communication a little bit more frictionless between you guys. So many of you might have actually encountered this, which is a user story. And a user story just helps the actual, if it is the product owner or the actual manager or business owner, communicate what their application or what they want their application to do to someone that's technical, if it is a developer or a consultancy. So with that, I know it kind of seems sometimes exhaustive to do something like this, but realistically, I think a huge thing that I've encountered over my years is the miscommunication between someone that is you know, at a very high level and working with all their ideas and really passionate about their products, sometimes skipping over things that they believe are really second nature to them. So if you were asking for a mode of transportation, you know, over a waterway to get from, say, Canada to the UK, realistically, I can give you a plane or a boat. And if you want a plane or a boat, not only is it going to be very different in cost, but it's also going to be very different in function. So the user stories are something that's super important and something that I really suggest absolutely every business person or tech person or everyone does that is trying to basically bolster their communication and really put down a finite understanding of everything that they need to ensure that not only as they're developing the application, but when they get to that end state, that it's exactly what you're looking for and you didn't only waste your time, but also saved a lot of money in the process. So once again, this page will be kind of available after, but a user story will be an exhaustive list basically of features that you need to actually be in the application to provide forward for a developer. So every single user story starts with a title. Over here, you can see basic authentication, group creation, and banding rights. They follow a very easy kind of formula. So it's super easy to pump out 1,000 of these and over time to put them in a back pocket, maybe even keep a small book with you, you know, as you're commuting to work or as you're, you know, on your lunch break, you can very easily scribble these down and they can help you build out exactly what your application needs to be. So as a description of the user, I want functionality so that a benefit. So once again, it's very cookie cutter, and this is for the sense that we don't want any miscommunication and misunderstanding between the moving parts. If we have 100 of these, we'll know exactly what every single user, administrator, you know, underwriter, arbiter has to do within this application, so we can have an entire system diagram and have no misunderstanding of all the features that need to be included. So the ones over here, as you can see, I'll just read one of them out. Let's say group creation. This is a user story. As a basic user, I want to be able to create a group of people to share private information with. Now this becomes pretty easy and self-explanatory, but as it grows out, you'll see that a lot of these come very easily. And then before you know it, you have tens of or hundreds of user stories. And that really just shows the complexity of individual features. And that's why it becomes so important to really write them out like this so you can pass them forward. So as you're writing out these user stories and really kind of parsing through the individual features that your application kind of has to do, I think it really starts painting a bigger picture of the control room or what your application, or who more so, sorry, your application has to service. So there's 2 parts to every application. There's your front-facing part that actually goes to your I guess, your users, your end users, and your customers in a lot of sense. And there will always need to be a portal for them. So they need to be able to sign in, they need to be able to change their information, and basically use all the features that you need them to use in this application. However, one thing that I feel like, or I noticed within my kind of, I guess, career is when people are building applications, they don't always take into account the intricacies on their own end, and the fact that, once again, when you build an application, it's not just the building of the application, but it's the maintaining, the iteration, and the improvement of the application. So one thing that I always say is when you're creating these user stories, understand what the makeup of your team is like. So right here, we have an in-house tech person, and then we have a front desk worker. So for an application, it's very often that you would have or utilize everyone on your team basically to ensure that this application is successful. However, the in-house tech person is going to have a very different makeup of personality traits than the actual front desk worker. So the in-house tech person might be very tech savvy, however, they're not very good with people. One can code, one can't, and one is very tech oriented and one's very business oriented. So from a high level, this is just, if you're making portals for the people on the outside of your application to interact with it, you have to ensure that when you're making the application, if you plan on maintaining the application, then you have to make the maintenance of that application and the interaction of that application from an administration standpoint just as easy as it is for the user to interact with, as it is for you to interact with. So from there, in this message as well, there's 5 points that I like to outline when it comes to actually the maintenance of kind of internal portals. And some of them are the simplicity of work, where every individual person should be able to conduct their tasks with the application easily without needing to interact with one another. And it should be kind of simple. There should be transparency between them. And as well, I'm not going to ask the front desk worker, to code something that the in-house tech worker could code, when very well at the very beginning, I can say I need a portal and I need an interface for my front desk worker to be able to look at the database very easily and delete or remove individual pieces that shouldn't be there. So once again, if you're thinking about the front end, also think about the back end. It's a full-time, well, it's not a full-time job. It's more so a full process to making sure that your application is good. So if you're giving stuff to them, make sure you give stuff to your team as well to make it easy and a little bit more of a chance for success. With that, there's 3 points as well that I like to talk about when it comes to accessibility. And that's accessibility from your side of the team, and things, once again, that a lot of clients that we work with do not initially kind of bake into their applications, and sometimes things that we have to talk to them about and show them the validity of, and hopefully they grab onto it, because these 3 points can really be pivotal to the actual success of the maintenance of your application, and without them, it becomes extremely difficult for your actual employees themselves to service this application. And as it grows, the actual servicing of it is the only thing that makes it viable and as well as accessible and usable over time. So number 1 is the data. How can you get data in and out of the application, and can you steward and regulate the data? Very often I have people coming forward to our business and they say, okay, I needed to do this. The database will kind of continuously grow. I'm kind of hands off and I'm gonna go back to my business, which is just, working sales and marketing. However, if you were to have an open database and you were to have people sign up for it, having any kind of reflexive system where the information that individual user can enter can go ahead and soil that database, or if they were to kind of put in more information and really skew data, then that can really hurt your entire application. And then from there, if you don't put in tools individually where you can go in and you can actually look at these customers and say, okay, this customer is malicious. This customer might be a competitor. This customer might just be a bot that's looking to kind of muck up my system and ensure that I can't provide the services I need, and I can remove them. If you can't do that, however, then you do have to pay quite a premium for either going back to a consultancy or paying a developer or a technician to come in and basically fix that for you. And that's something very easy at the beginning that you can do. And realistically, if that becomes very hard to do from a developer perspective, you can lose days, weeks. And if this is a pivotal part of your business, then unfortunately you could lose a very large, portion of customers that can go to your competitor. So data is very, very important. How you access your data, how you get into the application, and how you ensure your data is clean, because very often a lot of these applications that we're doing are data driven, and it's one of the most integral parts. So number 2 is content updates. So content updates, once again, is another thing that I think has to be worked around to with a lot of our clients, and not something that's at the forefront because they're thinking about all the great applications and all the great features that you can do, and the content that they push out sometimes and how to maintain and how to add that content is not always at the forefront of the brain. So how easy it is to add new content and update your main service offering. So content and service offerings can be very different to each individual person. excuse me, and your individual business. So with that, I guess if you were someone that is providing financial information and financial knowledge to someone through maybe say a financial education app, what was really important is that if over time people are, I guess, paying for your product through SaaS, so they're paying per month or they're paying per year, or I guess semi-annually, whatever it may be, it's important to understand that you have entered an agreement with them in a contract realistically that you will be providing them either the service or updated content stream to continue to garner their money and actually create this kind of iterative cycle where you pay them for it, or they pay you for information and you provide them information. However, ensuring that not only will the engine work, but you have every individual portal and interface you need to once again add new content, update content if needed, and then also, if possible, also add some main service offerings. So from one part, it might be very easy for an actual business owner in the crowd today to look at this and say, okay, this is simple. For the most part, I do provide, financial information and financial education. So all I have to do is make sure that I have a portal, for entering more information, entering videos, sharing information, updating things when regulations change. However, if this isn't as, I guess, prominent or as easy to kind of think about for you, then reaching out to a business analyst once again, or reaching out to a consultancy that does have end-to-end and multi-service sort of offerings like Gyroscopic does. They can very often help you understand this for free and how you can ensure that in the future you don't get caught here in a sense where you have to completely kind of go in every time that you're wanting to make an update, spend a whole lot of money on a developer perspective and a technology perspective instead of doing it yourself. And finally, information access management. So IAM, that's the acronym I usually use, and I think it's pretty used in technology. Just another little tidbit of information. If that one's dropped on you, rest assured, it just means information access management. And that just really refers to who can access information from both externally and internally, and can I change this over time? So this is another big piece where as your business grows, it's really important to understand that you may be adding, say, more desk workers, or you may be adding more administrators, you may be more customer success people, and whatever that means, there will be kind of a addition of people to the system, and what those people can access and what those people cannot access, not only internally on your business, but also externally, is something that's super important. So trying your best once again to kind of see a little bit ahead and say, okay, I need to be able to add these people because my business is going to grow. And every time my business grows, I want to be able to do this very easily instead of once again having to reach back out to a technician or a software industry or a consultant and being able to actually go into the database and change this manually. And as well, when it comes to security becomes a rolling problem where there's more people on the platform, accidents happen where someone might have too much access or too little access, and that can really create some big problems. So information access management as you scale is something that's really important. So accessibility, these 3 points, I think are really big things that are important to everyone. And once again, revisit these when you are kind of going through to make your digitization checklist and moving forward with a consultant. With that, I know one thing that I'll kind of highlight on and move through pretty quickly is a communication. So this is a little stat from IT Cortex that is 50% of all projects fail due to a lack of communication. I know very often when we are a business owner, we're working with a consultancy, communication might not be the best. Sometimes due to locality, they might speak different languages. The communication's not always there in regards to sort of cultural standards or whatever it may be. And the understanding that communication is something that should be included in all of these contracts. And as a developer and someone that's worked with many different development teams from all different sizes, that communication is something that is not frowned upon, but something that is encouraged. Now, the way that we communicate and the way that we kind of hold our project management is something that if you know about and if you are willing to kind of move within that stream, you can make it a lot more frictionless and a lot easier to kind of communicate as you're doing that. So for those of you that do know Agile project management, I would say I'm just going to kind of go over a little bit of how most software development teams communicate and how they actually disseminate kind of feature updates from there. And for those of you that don't know, I'll kind of highlight some of the important things. I won't go through the whole project management sort of methodology, but I will be talking about what you are entitled to when you do have kind of a relationship with a consultancy and why it's best to kind of work on an agile project management sort of framework as you're developing this. So the agile project So the Agile project management framework is something that was created quite a while ago when business really started to have an amalgamation or a merge with technology. And they realized that when you were building, say, I don't know, a house or a conventional business, that a sequential process was something that wasn't exactly the best way about looking at things. Specifications change, customers change, and technology is a rapidly growing environment and field where the actual communication and the way that we build technology needs to be able to move just as fast. So in Agile project management, we're able to test early and often, collaborate, visualize progress, seek transparency, and track issues. If your development team does not come with a project manager, it might be very valuable for you to go on YouTube, look up a couple videos about project management, and basically have a couple ins and outs of what a sprint is and how project or Agile project management progresses. But for the most part, all you need to know is usually when you're making these applications, developers like to work on 2-week schedules. So at the end of 2 weeks, you are able to kind of come in on something called a sprint end, if they're conventional, and for the most part they usually are, and see every individual kind of update that they've made, see the features that they've created, the features that they plan on creating, and also see any of the issues that they're encountering. From there, you're able to really comment on if you like something, if you don't like something, something is going in a direction you do not want, kind of nip it in the bud right there and ensure that it doesn't progress all the way to the ends of, I guess, the actual project, and then really kind of, I guess, be rough for you, not only in a financial means, but also, you know, say 4 or 5 months later, you don't exactly have the product that you wanted, and you can't do much about that because you weren't able to say something sooner. So Agile project management is something you should definitely ask about. If you do not have a project manager with the consultancy, seeking out a little bit of knowledge on project management on YouTube is completely fine. Watch a couple videos and understanding that you have the ability to talk to your developers on sprint ends or sprint beginnings, and from there seeing features, commenting on features, and giving as much feedback as possible. Feedback is always wanted. It's highly valuable. It's better than gold when it comes to development and when it comes to actually ensuring that the communication is smooth and what every developer really wants. Awesome. So from there, once again, we're going to talk about the team and the product and the fact that when you're done building your application, there's a whole bunch of things that are very important and integral to do after that application is built to ensure that, in this case, if it is a spaceship, that you're voyaging out into the unknown with the best team possible, and you have prepared for all the things that might come your way, well trained for them, and also have the proper instruments to ensure that you're best understanding the situation that's going on around you. With that being said, right here is another small kind of piece of information that has been almost gate kept and a little bit of old knowledge in the software engineering world, but it's something called the software development lifecycle. Now, when you are done your application, you're very much going to be running your business much like you have prior, except you're going to have a new stream of using this technology to basically leverage features and help if it is induct new, if it is end users, or provide new services to them through the already existing base that you have. So with that, if you kind of look here, you see this wheel. And the reason it's portrayed in a wheel is because just like your business, technology is never done. It's going to take constant pivoting. It's going to take constant looking at what you've designed. Is this the best way to do it? Should I do it any different ways? And what does that require for the evolution of my business? So when it comes to, we'll start in requirements analysis. As we go through these next few slides, we're going to find the best way to understand what the requirements of your growing business are, how to get a better understanding of your users interacting with that business, how to use different tools and tests to basically find out if these designs are exactly what your business needs, find out how to implement those designs, how to test them, and then basically right back into that whole circle of the software development lifecycle. So with that, there's a couple things that I think are the most important things when it comes to growing your product. And really when it comes to growing your product, this is the most important part of your business after you have created your application. So Facebook had many competitors at the time that sometimes if you were to look it up right now, you know, the actual technology alone is debatable if it was just the best piece and the only piece that led them forward to being as successful as they are. Most companies that are large now in the Fortune 500 that are, I guess, data-driven or really application-focused also encountered a battle like this, where realistically they had the application, there was an equally viable application around them, but growing their product, and these three things were really what a lot of these companies basically base their success in. So the first one is customer centricity. And that is building a product that your users have and told you that they want. The second one is feature focus. So that's only investing resources on features that are in demand and basically being used. And then something we like to call dev and ops, or development and operations. And that's making the process as frictionless as possible by collaboration and communication. So customer centricity, feature focus, and DevOps are luckily all things that can be created and integrated into your application through services that are usually already existing and services that are pretty cheap. However, what you really kind of actually invest a lot of the resources, if that is money and time on, is the people to manage these tools, because it's much more the actual keeping an eye on these and understanding basically how integral they are for actually guiding the development of your application and also the overall success of your application. So with that, I think the next slide is tools of insight. And I'll just jump over to that because really it ties together how we really get customer centricity, feature focus, and development operations. So tools of insight, like I said, are for the most part in this application when I provided after this presentation. I didn't want to dive right into kind of these services right now because I think there's quite a few. And I actually have a list of ones that my company, Gyroscopic, likes to use and why we like to use them and why they're some of the kind of forefronts in the space. But as long as you have kind of these three things in mind, and as long as you understand the importance of coming back and ensuring that you're always watching these tools of insight and you're allowing these tools of insights, much like a compass or a sextant at sea or in space, whatever it may be, I'm jumping themes here, to understand that this is where you should be going. This is once again going back to the very beginning where you're gonna have a lot more decisions when this application is done. And if you're ever making these decisions and think that they're off a gut decision, or some sort of intuition, then you should possibly wait and you should think, okay, is there any kind of tools, is there any kind of data that I can gather on this decision to have a lot more confidence in this decision and ensure that it's the right thing that I should do. So starting with functionality, one thing that we like to ask is how well are the features you made working? So one application that we like to use is Sentry LogRocket. Once again, don't worry too much about writing these down or taking note of these. They will be in the app or the actual presentation after. But when customers are on your profile or on your application, whatever it may be, there is going to be a certain amount of things that do work and don't work very well. So they'll encounter bugs and errors naturally, as good as it's been created. And they'll also encounter things that they're not using. So for the most part, say you have, I don't know, it's a calculator and everyone's using the addition, they're using the multiplication, they're using the subtraction, but nobody's using the trigonometry functions. And realistically, if you think that, I have to build in a whole new trigonometry calculator, and then we look over these functionality tools that say, in fact, none of your customers are using this, spending that time to kind of go forward and invest in those tools becomes something that is not only kind of not the best way, or I guess use of your time, but also can be pretty painful in regards to there's a lot of bugs, and these features are what's most kind of in demand right now and seeing the most throughput. So really focusing on these is the most important. So functionality there, a lot of tools, a lot of services, as long as you have the people to man them and you have, I guess, a desire to understand what your customer is doing and also look at them and hopefully gain insight from them in a very data-driven way, then they're very easy to use. Customer feedback. So customer feedback ties back into customer centricity, where realistically, as much as we like to think that, we're architecting something that is beautiful and we're building it for ourselves, unfortunately, the applications and the programs or services that are out there that are the most valuable are based around customers and not the individual, if it is CEO, CTO, whatever it may be. So customer feedback is gold. Customer feedback is something that you should always be seeking. Customer feedback is something that will guide most of your decisions. And customer feedback is, I should have put it a little bit higher because I think it's one of the most important things there. So what are your customers asking for you and what are you asking your customers? So these are all tools that intertwine quite well into each other, but understanding the prongs of sort of the same star, or in this case, triangle, it's important to understand the use of your customers and to interact with your customers, even if you might want to kind of have a facade of, we're providing something to them, we don't really need them to be involved with it. You definitely do. And I think from all the customers and all the kind of, if it is UI, UX testing, feedback kind of meetings that we've had, people are more than happy to provide this to you. And you just have to make sure that you have someone not only to disseminate this. So very often there's tools like Jira's service desk, where you can actually have a button in your website and it has a very, very intelligent way of breaking down if it's a bug, if it's an update, if it's something that they're suggesting, or if it's complete spam, to ensure that it goes through this pipeline and saves as much time for your developers and your operations and management as possible, whilst being able to skim off that top of information and really find out what those customers want. As well, just like the beginning, when we're gathering information from our customers, if it's asking them what kind of device they use, or if they feel most comfortable on a desktop or on their phone, it's very easy to kind of as well use things like MailChimp or MailJet, any of these other, services that have been designed for sending out information to clients or end users, getting that information back, and then having that raw information to either parse through with yourself, or once again with a company like Gyroscopic or any other consultancy that does end-to-end process and the full SDLC, where they can actually sit down and basically help you say your customers are having a very hard time being able to basically find what they need to find. So with that problem, it might be a UX problem. How do we get from customers, or end users from step A to step C as easily as possible with the least amount of clicks, so they're not being lost, they're not getting frustrated in this application? So getting the feedback, getting that raw data, and either yourself going through that raw data or finding yourself a professional that can use that raw data to basically get you to that next step and ensure that your application is everything that it can be and not being held back by anything small that was not foreseen, or even just a changing of business needs, where realistically as business owners, or wannabe business owners in the crowd, we all understand that especially now with COVID, things change. Our application has to change. And if we do not have these tools, we will not be able to ride that wave. In fact, we'll be caught under it and we will not be able to change with the times. Lastly, intelligent monitoring. So this is something as well that I think is best kind of worked along with someone that is in the kind of business technology world, the data science world, or the business analyst world, where there's a lot of intelligent monitoring tools out there that basically help you test new features, if that is A/B testing. So rolling out certain features to certain groups of people and seeing how they interact to really kind of help exactly, find out what features is best and which one perform the best, as well as really finite sort of, not too intrusive, but monitoring ways to see how they're interacting with the application, if it is times of day, when they're doing it, where they're doing it, how long they're spending, and all these other little metadata pieces that basically help you paint a better picture to get back to that functionality, what's working well, what's not working well, what are customers not even realizing that they're not liking realistically. So I would say this is really kind of that cutting edge and the precipice of what a lot of these big companies are doing to ensure that they stay on that bleeding edge of innovation, and working with a company to ensure that you're intelligently monitoring where your ship is going, your application, and once again, how to stay on that cutting edge, I think is something really important. And once again, going back to that, every decision you make should be data driven. If you feel like you're not kind of or you don't have a strong foundation of data to support that decision, maybe reaching out to someone that does know, and bringing all this information, if it's raw data you gathered, if it's questions you gathered from your customers, to help leverage that. So I think that brings me pretty close to the edge of my presentation. I do apologize. I know it's been a lot of information. I've been talking pretty fast. What I really wanted to do is I wanted to kind of highlight a lot of the large sort of important pieces when it comes to building an application. And once again, give you guys a lot of the information that is your best attempt at success when building an application that I've seen through a lot of the different companies in my career that I've worked with. And hopefully open up the conversation to hopefully create even a nexus of people in the crowd there that can communicate with one another and communicate with companies like Gyroscopic or other companies as well, to really better understand the need for custom personalized solutions of your business, and the understanding of that it is a process of gathering information, really building the specifications of what your application has to do, building the proper application that's robust, flexible, and scalable. And finally, my last point, understanding and ensuring that you have a good development and operations crew, if that is internal or external, that you can really reach out to and say, okay, times are changing. I don't have to let these times that have changed be, a hindrance to my business, or unfortunately for a lot of these, the complete end of my business. With a good team, you should be able to really ride any storm for the most part, and change and pivot if you have built the proper machine for your business to once again kind of ride that wave and find yourself on the other end, maybe a little bit different than what you envisioned, but also with the least amount of kind of negative ramifications. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I appreciate the patience and sort of hearing me ramble up here through a bunch of that information as fast as possible. But once again, I will provide the study guide, the actual PowerPoint itself, that has a wealth of links inside where you can go. If it is YouTube, there's a lot of different software pieces, as well as a lot of written pieces that you can go through to help kind of supplement the already, I think, pretty good pieces of information on these slides and better understand it. As well, like I said, I do work at Gyroscopic Technologies. I'm the CTO there, and we have a bunch of other people from developers, business analysts, salespeople, and marketing people that work for the whole software development lifecycle. That's like iteration, process development, planning, data mining, that are also here and a part of the community and would love to help. So if anything, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you guys all for coming, and as well, thank you to theCUBE for hosting this. I really appreciate it. I think we're also going to questions, so I would say don't log out yet. If you have any questions, I'll throw it back to Alana, and I think she'll be able to kind of cap it off here.
Okay, thanks, Juan. So the study guide he is referring to, we'll send it out via Eventbrite or through Gmail with a recording of the whole session. So you can expect that probably by the end of the week. But yeah, so we have a few minutes to jump into Q&A. If you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A function in Zoom. So we already do have some, so I'm gonna read some for one. So from Les, I know like building a house, what it costs depends on what you want. However, I have to ask the question for a small phone-based app that collects customer information. What would be the cost on the low end versus the high end?
Awesome. Was that Les, sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, Les, thank you so much. I was going to address that a little bit earlier, and I'm glad you kind of brought that to my attention. So with that being said, I do think very often we do not want to tell kind of consultants how much exactly we have to spend on an application, because there is a little bit of this weariness into them kind of gypping us or taking too much money. But I would say understanding, if you are at the POC stage, the MVP stage, or the service integration stage, and really trying to figure out how much money you have to put towards this and how many features you need. So if you're asking about a phone application that you just say disseminates information, sorry, could you just give that to me one more time, if Alana?
So, sorry, so
okay.
He has to ask the question for a small phone-based app that collects customer information.
Mm-hmm. So if it's a small phone-based app that collects customer information, realistically, if you don't need that many features, it could be done for a couple thousand dollars. It really can be cheap, and that really goes more so to the actual relationship that you have with the actual consultancy itself, and how they plan on kind of developing that for you. So if it's a small phone-based app, like I said, there's a difference between iOS and Android, or having it on both platforms, that you'll definitely have to decide about how much data you have, what you want it to look like, and what the interface is. But I would say for a simple phone, if that is the biggest feature that you're looking for, that could be done for as little as a couple $1,000s.
Okay. So the next one is from Kate. So I know costs can vary. What is the range for a typical or basic app? So I guess just a range for basics. Also for ongoing support and app updates, would there be a monthly retainer or something like that?
Certainly, yeah, that's another good question. So what I'll speak to is most recently where we've been with a lot of our clients and a lot of the applications that we've made. So a lot of the applications that we've made for our external clients, aside from the ones that we're making internally for our own business, they've been a lot of content dissemination for kind of content creators. So if that is sort of a business, usually provides a service to a person, they want to not only track their information, they want to provide, say, analytics. So let's just say, it's for your house, how your house is doing. Maybe you have to update your shingles this year, your wealth is going up this much. As well, I also want to every single week push you out information about upkeeping your house in the real estate market. So applications like that we found pretty, abundant, and we've accepted a lot of those because they've had pretty great ideas and good businesses to start with. And for web applications that are also phone applications in a way, it's something called a progressive web app, which I would suggest everyone looks into if they're interested in that. They've costed anything from, say, 20,000 to I think about 45,000. Now that 45,000 mark is pretty high because it's a lot of diversity, and once again, it's more of that sort of this is going to be super flexible. It's going to be robust, and I'm going to be able to do so many things with it in the future that I'm really kind of betting on it, and I need to be able to do all these different things. With that, when you come to Gyroscopic, what we do is if we develop an application for you, we guarantee over usually 3 years or X years, whatever it may be, that if there is a bug or if there is something that comes up, say in the change of technology, or we've developed something that's a little askew, that we will always fix that for you no matter what. And we'll have a certain amount of hours because you've went with us every single month to ensure that everything is running smoothly. However, if it comes to new feature development and kind of operations, so if that is setting up tools where you can kind of better understand what your client's doing, intelligent monitoring, we do have retainers where you can actually go through our business. You can talk with a lot of our kind of higher level management people and say, I need a technician because I know I'm going to have a lot of features, or I need someone that's really good at business, sales, and marketing because I really want to help push this out. So we do flexible retainers with contracts. We also have a guaranteed insured maintenance every single month if you go with a company like Gyroscopic. A lot of other companies do that as well, sometimes in a different regard or I guess capacity.
So another question, at what point does it make sense to have an in-house team versus outsourcing your development?
Certainly. So I think that really comes down to how much desire you want to run the business. So a lot of the clients that we have are very passionate about what they do, and let's just use that real estate example. If I'm a real estate agent, I'm really passionate about selling houses. What a lot of clients have done is they say, we're going to make the application with you, and we really want you to kind of manage the growth from, say, one person or one customer to 10,000 customers, because we really believe that I want to do what I'm doing, and I just want to kind of skim off the top and take all the money that it's garnishing, sort of thing, and then have you guys do everything else. With that being said, if you are planning on hiring an in-house team and managing the company is something that you want to do, what I think is really good from a consultant agency is regardless of what step you're on, I would say more so for the POC and the MVP, is work with a consultancy, get your POC or your MVP, and allow them to help you get to that point where you are profitable, or you have a little bit more security and foundation under you, where you can really sort of understand or be a little bit more, I guess, secure within the fact that you might be hiring people. So canvas the people, use the consultancy, get to that stage where you're a little bit more stable. And then from there, I would say definitely reach out.
Okay, so another cost question. On a range, how much would it cost a small business to create their own app, but as well, how much time would there need to be put into it to have it up and running?
Certainly. So once again, speaking from Gyroscopic and what we do at our consultancy here, I would say we can go back to that kind of question of content dissemination. A lot of the actual portals or platforms that we've made have been between 20 and 45,000. And when we actually develop those applications, we factor in, first off, a project manager, where we'll always have time to kind of communicate every 2 weeks, show you features. If you want to change things, we could change things. And ensuring that every step of the way, there's, say, maybe 20% more time to ensure that we're not feeling rushed on either end. You can always voice your opinions without worrying about deadlines being changed. And as we ship that product, what we do is we ship that product on full production. So we're going to develop that application. We're going to make sure it has the websites that you need. We're going to make sure it's ready to go. And then we have several weeks, depending on how big it is, prior to shipping it, to test it, to stress test it, to language test it, to locality test it, to run through a huge amount of rigorous tests, because realistically, it makes it easier for us to maintain it over time if it works well. So a lot of those applications that I said take between 20 to 45 are anywhere from, say, 3 months to about 4.5 months. And that's with the extra time for communication and changing a couple things to your liking.
So we have 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. If anybody does have more questions, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Juan on LinkedIn or wherever. Okay, so Ron asks, what advice would you give to a student that only has an app idea and doesn't know the slightest thing about how to make that idea a reality?
Certainly, and that's an app idea?
Yes.
Awesome. So one thing that I would suggest, if it's a student, if it's a student looking to make the idea, or if it's a student looking to, I'll give both examples. The first one I'll say is, I know Fleming, I'm not too sure, to be quite honest, exactly how they do their kind of, I think it's the projects program, but you can work with Fleming, or you can work with Trent University as well. They have the software engineering project, where if you have a viable idea, and if you can do a little bit of the groundwork, where maybe talking to investors or talking to someone that's interested, a lot more business work, we don't need that much technical knowledge. Say you're making a water testing app, go talk to maybe the M&R, go talk to a business in town, get a little bit of buy-in, and then bring that forth to either Fleming or bring it over to Trent University, where you can get developers to basically help you create your idea and bring it to life, where you can have, like I said, that POC, that proof of concept, that you could bring back to them and maybe get a little bit of funding if it is through amazing programs as well, like the Cube, that also does a lot of grants and funding and helping basically make ideas, maybe like you have, Ron, into actual businesses. As well, if you want to completely make the application yourself, I would say a lot of studying. So freecodecamp.com, go check them out, and just kind of head to the books, really.
And to add on to that, or you can contact the Innovation Cluster.
Yeah.
We can help you and get you in contact with the right people. We work really closely with Trent and Fleming, so definitely reach out to us. Okay, so last question, just for time's sake. Kelly asks, I am looking at an app for a restaurant to offer online ordering and payments. What would I be looking at for cost to do this? So restaurant to offer online ordering and payments.
Restaurants. So I think when it comes to an application like that, I would refer back to this slide deck and those 6 things that I kind of put, those 6 segments in regards to technology options. When you're working with other clients, a lot of the time we have to really be weary of certain requirements that they have. So you would have to find out what security they need in regards to, the person's information, where the payments are going. You'd have to ask them sort of what it has to look like, how accessible it has to be for their customers, and really go to that individual client or those clients that you're hoping to work with, find out what they need for their applications, what their security protocols are, and then really work backwards. If I was to say from an estimate, if it was a simple application like that, I could say it could be anywhere between for our company, once again, we usually have a lower limit where if the application is a little bit too small, we would suggest going to somewhere else. So if it was big enough to get through our doors, we would say from 10,000 to maybe about 30,000, depending on how robust you want to make it, how designed you want it. But it could be cheap, but I would say reach out to the clients, find out what they need, work backwards, get that list of requirements, and then go to a company, either like, the Innovation Cluster or Gyroscopic, to help you basically find out a little bit better, more accurate of a price, really.
Okay. So sorry, I'm going to sneak this one last question here because it's a good one. Where does the patent fit into the process for a great app idea, and at which point in the process does this usually happen?
Certainly. So the patent for a great app idea comes in, it's a couple different places. So there is a IP, so there's intellectual property, and then there's also technology patents. So I think that really comes down to what it is that you're trying to do specifically, and then also how you're moving about doing it. So if you're looking at intellectual property, and that is, you say you think you have a very good idea, realistically, and you really want to move forward on that idea and start building out that idea. If you are a sole developer, or you're reaching out to a consultancy to actually put this idea together, I would say working as quickly as possible to kind of get that IP realistically, because if you are going to be reaching out to developers, consultancies, and you are going to be reaching out to, say, advisors, investors, whatever else it may be, first off, it'll give you a great peace of mind to actually understand that that you have this in paper and writing prior to a lot of the time that you've reached out to any of these other people. And as well, the fact that the earlier the better, realistically, when it comes to something like this. You get it off your plate, you don't have to worry about it, and you can move forward with it. When it comes to technology patents, for the most part, technology patents are a little bit more of a process, and you usually have to create it out after that. And then from there, it is a lot to kind of go. And I might not say a lot, because I think as well, Alana and the Innovation Cluster, I think there's a client there that does work with patents, and I would refer you to her before you take anything that, as I say, or that I say as kind of dogma. But if it's an IP, intellectual property, a good idea, definitely take it away right away and try to get it. If it's technology, prove it, test it, get as much documentation as possible, like it is, a scientific paper, and then kind of go forward with that.
Yeah, to add on, we have a number of knowledge partners that work in intellectual property, so you can contact us and we can put you in contact with them. But that's it for questions. So thanks so much, Juan, for facilitating. Again, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to me and I can connect you with Juan. But thanks again to everybody for tuning in today, and we will see you at our next workshop. So bye, and thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Alana.